This story is pretty amazing. I mean, this story is really amazing. It's not bad enough that we have the CIA essentially working out of the New York Police Department, as we reported a couple of weeks ago, working hand in hand with the police department. In fact, one could say that it's very hard to tell the difference between the CIA and the New York Police Department's intelligence unit, since you have people on both the New York Police Department's payroll and the CIA payroll. And they are using this because the CIA is prohibited from spying on Americans. That's the job of the FBI. CIA is using the police department, which has no such regulations, to essentially spy on all Pakistani cab drivers, all the mosques, all people of the Muslim faith. And apparently with the New York Police Department, it doesn't matter, are you in New York, or are you in Connecticut, or are you in New Jersey, or are you in Vermont, or it could be anywhere. And now, if that's not bad enough, Spencer Ackerman over at the Danger Room on Wired breaks the story that the FBI is teaching its counterterrorism agents. Now, we want these people to be smart. I mean, not just, they're obviously smart, but we want them to be smart about Islam. We want them to be smart about all religions, frankly, so that they can go into a situation and understand what they're looking at, because the hardest thing with counterterrorism is to not necessarily find information, to understand which information is the most relevant. The FBI is teaching its counterterrorism agents that mainstream American Muslims are likely to be terrorist sympathizers, that the Prophet Muhammad was a cult leader, and that the Islamic practice of giving charity is no more than, quote, a funding mechanism for combat. This is moronic, because there's no evidence for any of that. In fact, the empirical evidence would suggest, although I guess how do you do that empirically with the Prophet Muhammad as a cult leader? That just seems to be an opinion that seems highly irrelevant. You could probably argue the same thing about the Pope. At the Bureau's training ground in Quantico, Virginia, agents are shown a chart contending that the more devout a Muslim, the more likely he is to be violent. There's no empirical basis for that either. These are excerpts from dozens of pages of recent FBI training material on Islam that Danger Room has acquired. In them, constitutionally protected religious faith of millions of Americans is portrayed as an indicator of terrorist activity. The FBI isn't just treading on thin legal ice by portraying ordinary observant Americans as terrorists in waiting, a former counterterrorism agent say. It's also playing into al-Qaeda's hands. Focusing on the religious behavior of American citizens instead of proven indicators of criminal activity like stockpiling guns or using shady financing makes it more likely the FBI will miss the real warning signs of terrorism. Exactly. If you're just going around and checking every cab driver who's Pakistani, you're going to miss something else because you're going to be spending your resources on wild goose chases. If you're sitting around thinking that all Muslims in the United States are inherently terrorist sympathizers, it's going to make finding that needle in a haystack more like finding a needle in the entire country's hayfields. Depicting Islam as inseparable from political violence is exactly the narrative al-Qaeda spins, as it is related to the idea that America and Islam are necessarily in conflict. That's why FBI whistleblowers provided Danger Room with these materials. So you have the FBI itself now turning on itself and saying, this is ridiculous. Does Ali Soufan's name ring a bell? This is the guy who said that the torture regime was not only morally wrong, but stupid. Over the past few years, American Muslim civil rights groups have been raised alarm about increased FBI and police presence in Islamic community centers and mosques. This document may help explain the heavy scrutiny. These briefings are elective, not mandatory. But not all counterterrorism veterans consider these briefings to be benign. Teaching counterterrorism operatives about obscure aspects of Islam, says Robert McFadden, without context, without objectivity, and without covering other non-religious drivers of dangerous behavior is no way to stop actual terrorists. He recently retired as one of the Navy Criminal Investigative Service's Al-Qaeda hunters. Does that ring a bell? Navy Al-Qaeda hunters? It was Navy Special Ops that killed Osama bin Laden. He may know something of what he's talking about. These briefings are written such that the stated purpose of one about allegedly religious sanctioned lying is to identify the elements of verbal deception in Islam and their impacts on law enforcement. Not terrorism, not even Islamist extremism, but Islam, writes Ackerman. According to this FBI training, religious Muslims have been and always will be agents of aggression. All of this has been written by someone who is consulting them, who is formerly a World Nut Daily contributor. You know, the birthers. This guy, Gawthorpe, his major suggestion for waging the war on terrorism was to attack what he called soft... This is how stupid this guy is. His major suggestion for the war on terrorism was to attack what he called soft spots in the Islamic faith. In other words, the weak underbelly of the Islamic faith, to induce a deteriorating cascade effect upon the target. Critical vulnerabilities of the Quran, for example, are that it was uttered by a mortal. Do you understand what he's saying here? That the guy who developed this material for the FBI thinks that one of the keys to defeating Muslim terrorism is to try and completely disabuse the 1 billion Muslims around the world that the Muslim faith is a bunch of hokey pokey because it was uttered by a mortal.
Someone should attempt to explain to a Christian that Jesus was immortal, and let's see how they take that.
Right. Oh, that'll be easy. The whole thing will come tumbling down. Hey, did you know that you can't get pregnant if nobody impregnates you? What? But the Virgin Mary, you mean... That's right. I'm not a Christian anymore. Nobody please come and try and tell me that the Red Sea didn't part. I may not have, I may chuck out the Judaism. And of course, I actually know for a fact that it did part. I witnessed it in a scientific experiment at Universal Studios when a bunch of us were in a amphibious, sort of like a bus. It didn't have to be amphibious, and we just drove through like a small portion of the Red Sea out in Studio City, California. It was unbelievable, and they had a picture of Moses there, and there was thunder. I mean, it was crazy. And if anybody was ever to tell me that was impossible, in addition to having seen it with my own eyes, forget about it. This is unbelievable. And if you can believe it, which is almost equally unbelievable, is that on Tuesday, leaders of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security, Joe Lieberman and Susan Collins, warned that law enforcement lacks meaningful standards to prevent anti-Islam material from seeping into counterterrorism training. Apparently so. Apparently so. Stunning.